Hello and welcome to the Zach Think Share podcast. I'm your host, Zach Watson, and I'm your favorite mental health coach and recovering man-child. In today's episode, I'm going to be covering a couple of questions that I was thinking about. So I made the last I made my last episode talk a little bit about the challenges that I personally had with fair play. And one of the things that I've learned about myself is I am a verbal external audio processor. So what I know that I need to do just about all the time is speak out loud about my ideas before I can write them. I really struggle to write, and so I recognize that speaking them out loud makes a huge difference for me. Most of the time when you're seeing my short form content of a 90-second video, I've it's rattled around my brain for a minimum of 10 minutes to 3 months. Um, and I've probably tried making at least one attempt at it. Many of my videos, I end up having to do a handful of different takes, like trying to figure out what to say. And I learned in the early days back when I was just really into YouTube back in the 20 teens, that I would make a 4 minute video, or it would take me 15 minutes to make a 4 minute video. And then after I'd said all of it, I was like, oh, that's what I was trying to say. And then I have to start over. And it was like the last 2 minutes of a 15-minute video would be the actual 4 minute video that I would put out onto YouTube for my students. So, right now I'm working on my book. Currently, the proposal is a better way to do better. And I've recognized right now I'm looking at chapter 8, which a huge goal of this chapter is, okay, you're now taking on a lot more in your home. You're not just asking, hey, can you make me a list? You're doing significantly more. You're leveling up. And the current chapter we have it is called Activating Your Dad Brain. So I wrote down a couple of ideas that I wanted to think through with y'all out loud here. For those that are listening, I'm hoping that this presents hope, because I think there are a lot of guys out there like myself that are teetering in between, like doing really well and holding significantly more of the invisible labor at home and improving on the imbalances that exist, and at the same time, like having moments that are not going as great. Um, so, chapter 8 is really about like, how do we kind of catch up to women in that way? What are some of the moments that I had that I feel like I've improved on? Um, so I'd talk a little bit about a moment where I felt like I'd grown a lot, like mental load ownership, but also realizing where I had a lot more growing that had to be done. Um, there's a lot of it's always a lot of videos that kind of come to mind that I've made. It's also 10:30 p.m., but I'm inspired to write about this because I've been thinking about these questions almost all day. Because any good book, I think, has really good stories that are really potent for the reader and really tap into what they're experiencing. So, a really good example, a couple examples that kind of come to mind. I can remember this video. It had really nice foliage back in fall 23. And my wife she was visiting actually the place that we now live, a couple hours north of where we were. And our, at the time, 2-year-old was sick. And what I was really proud of, that I was like, it was a great acknowledgement of growth for me and growth for our relationship and the trust that had been being built, was that despite our child being sick, me being on top of meds, a couple of the challenges that happen all the time, just about any time our child gets sick, is that Alyssa is the first person to say, hey, did you check her temperature? Um, hey, maybe we should call a doctor. Like, let's keep an eye on the symptoms. Is like, I'm good at that once we've defined that she's sick. I really struggle when we haven't made that initial definition in the first place. So what I remember being proud of was that while Alyssa was a couple hours away with their brother, hanging out with her cousins, um, she never called. She never checked in, said, "Hey, how she's doing? Hey, have you been checking her temp?" Um, I felt like I was being trusted, like in a really wonderful way that it either been a really long time since I'd felt that level of trust since before our child came. Um, but there's also moments where I wasn't feeling 100% confident in my potential management of her sickness and her symptoms and stuff. So I feel like that was a good moment where I was like, there's a lot of moments where it's hard for me to acknowledge where I feel good about owning the mental load. And it's more, I know it's significantly more an external validation that I built enough trust with Alyssa that she trusts me to take on things. Um, and so while there's a lot of moments where I feel like I am taking a lot more ownership on things and I am kind of running the show in a way, there's still moments that Alyssa's like, what the hell, but you dropped this ball too. And so that was really interesting for me because it was really external validation of her noticing that she wasn't checking in on me in the way that I was anticipating, which, just brings me to an earlier moment, which I was really proud of, which, it was actually the first 2 weeks of implementing the fair play method and really trying to take on more ownership. And I came to Lissa and I said, "Hey, I have this list of what." So we'd sat down with the fair play cards. We'd sat down, looked at all the things that exist in our home, and said to ourselves, "Okay, like what are two things that like we could really try to improve on? We're not going to try to bite off way more than we can chew. Let's just try to start with two." We sat down and came up with trash and dishes. And I know I tell this story a lot, especially with some of my clients that I meet earlier on, and they're learning about my story. And one of the things I really encourage guys to do is say, rather than say, "Hey, what's like your standard of care that we should do?" It's instead identify like, okay, what's the standard of care that I know has been being done? What's the standard of care that would probably be super ideal? What do I feel good about committing to? And I came to her, I said, "Here's these odds are going to get the best of me. Here's the standard of care that I think is expected." And we had a dog at the time, Missy Aspen. We had a 1.25 year old at the time. And I said to Alyssa, "Okay, there's like 14 things, I think." I was like, "Here's the 14 things that I can think of that are involved. Like, make sure all the big pots are cleaned and I'm drying. Dishwasher is completely full. No dishes in the sink. Any junk in the bottom of the sink is tossed in the trash. Um, Dog is fed. Cats have been fed. Um, if there's any like food that got left out near their bowls, like sweep that up or get it in place. Any leftover food is put away. Any other food that was originally brought out, put away. Um, Counters cleared, counters sprayed and wiped. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were, but I came to her with this list. This is like the list that I know she cared about, but we had never quite defined that way. And I remember her saying to me, like, so I said to her, "Okay, instead of you always saying, 'Hey, Zach, can you go start dishes?' Like, let me just own it completely. Like, have you not think about it. I'll just own it completely." And she's like, "All right, there's no way you're gonna do that. Like, it's crazy. No way." And I remember I printed it out, put it underneath a little sheet, got a little marker on there so I could check it off. And the first 2 nights I actually checked them all off. And by the third night I was asking myself, okay, I think I did all of them. What am I missing? And then I would go up and see where my memory was missing. And after about 2 weeks, I felt really good. I think I did a 98% job. There were one or two things I missed out of the whole 14 item checklist over a 2 week period. And I came to her and I said, well, it's been 2 weeks. I had said I wanted you to give me 2 weeks to fail. You laughed at me and thought I would fail. I feel like I've done pretty good. What's the experience been like for you? And she's like, you know what? I actually haven't thought about it at all, which means you must be doing a pretty good job. And I remember that was a really pivotal moment for me, is feeling like it was possible to own things and feel trusted, and her not feel alone in the battle of the operations of our home. And at the same time, I was like, great, I did that with one thing, but we identified the other day that there's 64 fucking things in our house. So I think that was another really good example. That's probably the best one of me seeing that I'm capable of owning things, that I'm good at recognizing things. It was my first one. It was the first one I was taking full ownership of. Same with trash and recycling. I said, okay, here's the standard of care I'm planning on doing. I feel good about upholding this. I'm going to execute on. I think that was the other part. It was trash out if it's at a certain threshold. That I think was another aspect of my confidence. It was 2 weeks of her not asking to put the trash out, did it make it out? And 2 weeks of her not asking if I was going to do the dishes, but just knowing that would happen and I was accountable for it. So it was, I think, a really good story for that. Why is mom brain important? What have myself and my clients gained from tapping into those skills? When I think of what mom brain is, I know there's been a handful of books written about this. I should probably actually read Chelsea Cannaboy's book. Mom brain to me is, it feels like you are an ultimate caregiver for somebody. You're thinking consistently about all the things that are needed for that person. I think a lot of founders and or CEOs of companies have mom brain for their company. So they're caregiver for it. They want to see it doing well. They care about the idea, not just the money coming in. But mom brain is more focused around a human being and taking care of them. And so I think it's important that someone has mom brain. And I feel responding to this question, but thinking about mom brain it's important that someone is thinking about the caregiving of a certain person, and that you're consistently monitoring, taking on the cognitive labor and or emotional labor of making sure a person is living well. And I know that I don't know if it naturally came to me. I think there are a lot of moments where Alyssa had already done a ton of the research. I'm even looking at as the twins are coming right now. She was ahead of me on doing the research on doulas and what kind of support we're going to need. Are we going to need to be in the NICU? How are we going to take care of me? How am I going to take care of her? How is she going to take care of the twins? How am I going to take care of our 4-year-old? In a lot of ways, I would say that she's been talking about, she's been wanting to protect my sleep. And because I think she cares deeply about the experience and the attachment our 4-year-old is going to have in this transition time in her life. And I think Alyssa remembers a really tough time when both of her siblings came into her life, which I think they have like a 4 or 5 year difference. And then, yeah, I think another 7 year difference from her younger brother. So I think she cares really deeply about it. So I think she has mom brain about that. And so because of the conception of how we're going to make sure that our 4-year-old has a positive experience with the twins coming in, and that she's not just going to be forgotten. She's not just going to be another cog in the machine, that she's going to be cared for, that she's going to have the love and attention on her still. As she's saying, I need you, Zach, to be my rock. So I want you to get sleep because I know I'm going to be up with the twins. I'm going to be touched out. I'm going to be putting a lot into them. I'm going to be recovering from a C-section. I need you to be emotionally stable, and I need you to be there for our 4-year-old. I need you to be her go-to, and I need you to be functioning. And I think you're going to be our functioner for the house mentally, while I'm going to be giving everything that I got physically to the twins. It's interesting because both she has the mom brain of conceiving that, and she's wanting to conceive it in such a way and doing some of the initial cognitive efforts that she can hand off so much of that cognitive and emotional labor to me and feel good about that I'm going to be capable of it. And that means looking like having decent sleep habits, like we talked about, getting analog alarms instead of phones because we know we stay up on them. So when I think about what mom brain is and or like what it is to really be fully conception planning, executing for your children, God, I feel like I've gotten so much value out of being that functioner for my child, while mom brain is, we probably call it mom brain because typically and primarily moms that are doing the birthing are the ones that are experiencing so much more of that full mental load of owning things for kids. When we see, we'll say like same-sex dads, like one of them ends up often doing that, is some of the research that was done, especially for the Fair Play book, is in other places. I forget what the book was. There's another book talking about it, but in same-sex couples, especially with men that neither of them are the birthing parent, like someone is capable of taking on that mom brain, really, which is just, it's the full mental load of caring for a human being. And I think, I just walk around all day more confident knowing that I'm caring for my kid. And I know when pickup time is. I know how to manage and be with her when she's dysregulated. I know what I'm likely doing to dysregulate her. I know what her habits are, how to lean into the good ones, how to help her stray from the bad ones. I, I just walk around with so much confidence when I know that I'm doing a good job taking care of our 4-year-old. In the last 6 months, while Alyssa's been going through this pregnancy, I gotta stop saying 6 months. We're really close to, we're at week 35, 32, that's 8. So in the last 8 months, I've been caring for her primarily. And confidence is a huge one. I have a lot of gratitude for moments when I realize that Alyssa has been carrying things that I'm now carrying differently. Even like simple things like noticing how she tidies things in between when she's caring for her. I think pride definitely shows up, like looking at my emotional dashboard here of some of the other positives that show up. I feel really connected with our 4-year-olds. I feel really connected with Alyssa too when I'm taking good care of her because I know she cares deeply about whether I'm doing a good job at that. Um, yeah, some of the magic of this age of being with a 4-year-old is that there's a lot of moments where they're just like, I love you, Dad. Like, unprompted, you're not talking about it, and just they sit in those moments of feeling really connected with you. And I remember it being put this way. I forget who it was. I think it was the author of that book, The One Thing. Um, just like the best job in the world is being dad. And Alyssa really cringed at that phrase, that statement of like job. Um, I see it as a duty that I signed up for and that I am fully committed to. Um, and knowing that I'm doing good at that job and getting both external feedback from our 4-year-old, external feedback from my wife, and the people in the village seeing it that we live near, but also like, especially when I'm proud of myself that, we got out of the house on time because I knew how to manage her stalling tactics. Um, I was able to get her to eat some vegetables because I know which buttons to press. And we had a really great time earlier today because I know what kind of things she likes to do. And I was able to, we worked on riding her bike and hanging out with some neighbors and played with different people and prompting her when I saw she needed prompted, but I also, let her kind of take the keys and run on a few different things. And just knowing that you're facilitating that experience and both you've built up trusts and relationship with them and with the people around you to make that experience happen. Um, and just it fills me with a lot of intrinsic motivation to keep doing it. It fills me with a lot of joy that I'm doing. You I don't necessarily think it's what I was put on earth to do, but like that it's something I committed to, and I feel really good about how I'm fulfilling on. Because who doesn't love setting a goal and making it happen? And while I don't often set goals around how I'm with my 4-year-old, um, I would say a unspoken goal that I constantly have with her is like that I'm fulfilling her needs, that I understand her emotions, and that I'm doing repair when it's needed. Um, that really it really fulfills me. And that's, I think, what I gain from tapping into those skills. Why do I think men struggle with mom brain? What has been most effective for me to be able to grow that muscle in my own brain? I'm going to start with the controversial one first, is I think that maternal gatekeeping has definitely played a part for me. There have been a handful of times, I think, where Alyssa really wanted to take things away from me because I think a mixture of her not wanting to experience shame that I'm helping with it because she's not a good mom if I need to help. But I mean, I know I feel the same to him too. Even tonight, it was a long day. Our child got a lot of outdoor time, a lot of interaction, a lot of different experiences. Um, and at the end of the night, it took 45 minutes. Typically, it takes an hour. But Alyssa came in for intervention when there was crying that was happening, and I didn't think I needed her there. But it was hard to see her choose to come in and help when I really thought I had it handled. So I would say that's definitely one thing that I struggle with is when mom steps in when I want to have full ownership of a challenge. Um, because I know for sure in some places that can lead to learned helplessness. Um, there are absolutely some times in our marriage, in our parenthood, where at some point I would keep trying to own things, and then Alyssa would just always step in at a certain point, and I would be like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like, hey, this really makes me not want to get better because you're just going to step in every time and not like let me fail and or not let our child be in distress so that I can learn. And or sometimes, also would struggle too. She was learning too. So I think that's one of the first ones that I really have struggled with over the time. The second one that I would say has been a big challenge is just like the head start that women tend to have because it's going through their body. If I if I hurt my shoulder, which that's reality. I kind of hurt my rotator cuff recently. It's not been quite right. Now, I haven't done a ton of research on it, but I've started looking at things. I've started doing a couple exercises. It's my body. Now, if I tell Alyssa about it and it, is going to affect our future, she'll know about it a little bit. She might do a little bit of research. She might do a little bit of man keeping and almost get ahead of me on that. But for the most part, because it's in my body, it's my problem. And while it might affect both of us, like it is ultimately my problem, I'm going to get ahead of her in the cognitive labor of that. I host the main emotional labor because it impacts me the most. Um, and so because of those two things, I'm naturally going to be having a head start on her of knowing more about it. So similarly, I think there's that the moment that pregnancy happens, women are buying the books. They're like, okay, I'm about to go through a very personal journey of at least about 9 months that my body's going to go through things. My diet's going to change. My body's going to change. My clothes aren't going to fit. I'm going to go through this process. And then it's also going to change our lives, the rest of our lives for what comes after when we have to take care of this person. In those 9 months, there are countless moments where I am cognitively catching up, but I'm not in the same emotional place because it's not my body. And so, like, naturally, like, it, some people, it comes a little bit more naturally and they're naturally more interested in things and they catch up quicker. I know for me, it's been a challenge and I feel gross saying this. Like I have shame in saying this is that, it's required active cognitive pushing of myself to catch up, to understand what's going on with her, to get up to speed. It hasn't necessarily come naturally to just like, I'm going to look at what's going on with Alyssa's body and understanding what's happening here. It's been much more of me like, yeah, I ask her all the time how she's doing and I check in on things she's mentioned, like, hey, are you following that aspect of what the doctor asked you to do? And like I do own a fair amount of mental load around being up to date on what things are when they're being communicated. And I'm also not doing the cognitive labor of a lot of research of what she could potentially be going through versus she is. So I think for sure that 9 month head start on their own bodies, which also becomes, quite quickly, a mixture of the algorithms on the computers you're being pitched. You're going to see things on different social platforms that men might not see because they're not doing a bunch of research about pregnancy. So like that head start also is going to spiral in like a constructive way for her learning curve. So she's going to experience so much of that learning curve earlier because of modern day like social media, but two, because there's so many shoulder topics, so many ancillary topics that are going to get touched on in so many of those educational materials, that it makes sense why they're going to go through more of that. So for me, it's taken a lot of active catching up, and time alone with our child, to understand their needs. I'm trying to think if there's a third one that I think there's some biology in there. Um, I don't think it's worth diving into all that much, though. I think if we were to dive into it too much and lean into it too hard, we would just lean out. And I don't think that that's worth our time. So yes, like, moms and their bodies and their brains are probably built differently. And, it's, I'm sure there's aspects of childbirth that are traumatic, actually, no matter how positive your experience was, and it changes and alters your brain ultimately, which men aren't going through specifically in those ways. So I think those are a couple of huge reasons why men struggle with acquiring mom brain, because we don't have the same emotional drivers putting us into doing more cognitive labor. Um, for me, it's like I've had to purposely activate it. It's not come naturally necessarily. I think what's been most effective for me to be able to grow that muscle, though, is having more alone time with our child. And honestly, one thing that's been hard to watch is, when Alyssa makes a lot of sacrifices for herself, and I see her not get to do a lot of the things that she wants to do. And so when I remember she got this app like Couch to 5K or something, maybe like a month postpartum with their first, and she ended up hurting herself. But I remember being so excited for her that she was like going to do something for herself and set a goal that was going to require me to step up and make sure to give her space by figuring out how to get her, be with our newborn long enough that she could do a little bit of training. That was really exciting for me to do for her. Now, I know not all men do that, but I think that leaning into like what your motivations are, what you love about your partner, what you love seeing your partner do, and facilitating that by being well learned on childcare, um, that for me, I think, was something worth leaning into. How did your mindset and the way that you saw yourself in a partnership family shift once you started doing more mom brain things? Hmm. I think there's a little bit of an identity shift that occurs. You're just more confident in your parenthood, and in that confidence, your learning curve improves and quickens, and you're more interested in asking questions. I think sometimes, like, is this normal? Is this a good way to go about things? Listening to podcasts, or, learning more about potential ways to, number four. Um, I think the mindset is looking at what kind of identity you have and what kind of identity shift you might potentially be going through. trying to think of other times that I took on more childcare. I mean, I took 3 months of paternity leave and then sort of an additional one, which was because I got my pancreas on the last day of paternity leave. Um, Not pancreas. Appendix. Well, yeah, number 5. I really gotta go to bed. Um, how did your mindset and the way you saw yourself in the partnership family shift once you started doing more mom brain things? Yeah, I mean, I think I just saw myself as a more capable parent. It's probably a mixture of I was cutting corners, but I wasn't doing as much cognitive labor. I was able to be more present with her child, and I was able to make more decisions kind of off the cuff. Like, I don't know, things just came a little bit more naturally to me. Another moment that comes up to me is um, last summer when every Friday I took off to be with her because we knew we wanted to have more children. Um, and so we're like, okay, it's gonna be your last summer where it's gonna be just her. Um, but even before that, when I said, okay, I'm gonna step away from my teaching job so I can be number 6, um, so that I can have a part-time remote hybrid job, or it's a full-time job but part-time remote. Um, and there are a lot of times where I know my wife was doing a good amount of solo parenting around then, but I'm gonna have to noodle on that one a little bit more. What challenges pop up around mental load when life gets crazy and you and your partner need to be flexible? Some of the challenges I think that occur are I know that a lot of the problems, Alyssa, she will get ahead of them earlier. I think because she knows that there's a good chance they're still going to default to her if we don't both get ahead of them. So, I recognize we still have an imbalance of labor. We're probably going to have that for a long time. And I know it's something that I'm always going to be wanting to work on because I want it to be fair. Um, but I think if you look at almost like water in a cup, and the left side of the cup is Alyssa's load, and the right side of the cup is Zach's load, but you know that it's like if it were already a diagonal and she's carrying more when life gets crazy and we need to be flexible. I think sometimes and she definitely ends up taking on more of the initial conception, which often we tried to turn into my cognitive labor, but she might conceive of a good amount of it. Like, for example, as the twins are just a couple weeks away. We were talking the other day about meal trains. We've already, the village we live in and the church, the UU church we go to, we're we're going to look at helping us with meal trains. And she's like, oh man, we need like freezer stuff, but we need freezer space. We don't have enough space for it. So she's like, Zach, I want you to look into getting a freezer. Like, can I have you own that fully? And first off, I said yes, but that's a great example of like we're potentially on the precipice of one of the biggest life changes we're ever going to go through. It's going from either 0 to 1 or 1 to 3. And she is thinking a lot more than I am. She's getting ahead of a lot more than I am. Question is whether we're getting back to the same page often or not. And so I think the challenges are trying to keep the level of fairness that you had, because wherever the imbalance is, it's probably going to get accentuated whenever life gets hard and things are being thrown in your face or you're about to enter a new chapter. Whoever's already holding the most is probably going to end up holding more again. And so regulating emotions frequently, talking about it, when invisible labor is getting heavy, talking about it. Those are things we've both done some good job of, but also there have been a lot of moments where we haven't done a great job of talking about it. So I've been really proud of Alyssa. She actually had a huge moment the other day. She said to me, I was in the kitchen, it wasn't fully clean, and she pointed out, oh, that sink needs to be cleaned. We have a white sink instead of silver one, so you can see everything. And she took I was like, yeah, I gotta clean it. Um, she kind of took a step back and said, I was just about to nitpick you on some cleaning things, but I recognize what I'm actually feeling. She's going into her dashboard is I'm feeling lonely, that I feel like the list of the things that need to happen before the twins come is all on me. And so she, we talked a little bit, and I said, it sounds like what you need is for us to align and or to delegate and assign some of the things that you're thinking about. It's one of them right now is I am now accountable for figuring out freezer space, and getting an additional freezer to put in our garage so we can have frozen meals. Um, Us being able to have that conversation was a huge step. Now, the imbalance still with her, and it got worse. And we've gotten significantly better at least taking on more of the cognitive labor fairly, even if the conception is still pretty unfair, and she is owning significantly more of it. So flexibility, I don't know if flexibility is quite the right word that I want to use, but um, when we need to be more communicative of what's happening for us, when we're about to go through a tough time, whether it was the big move that we had when we found out Alyssa was pregnant. We sold our house a year and a half ago. Whenever there's been big changes, the flexibility is much more around what we sacrifice so that we can have time to get on the same emotional page. That's where I think flexibility is really important. Um, there's sometimes where it's nope, I got to get to work. I got to do this thing. I don't have time to talk about emotions right now. And what we've been willing to do is actually, this can wait. Right now I'm working on building a low ticket product that people can use to some really high quality videos for me to explain mental load to men, and have it be a series of 3 videos. There's a couple different steps that I need to take to complete that project and kind of hand it back over into her court. She's been spearheading it and adding some things to the business. That's been a top priority for us, is to finish that before the twins come. Where we've been flexible is when emotions are high, saying, hey, we need to pause this, or we're going to lose some sleep and you might need to nap in the middle of the day tomorrow to function better. But we need to talk about this. I think that's where our flexibility is really lied, is being willing to sacrifice being late to work, not getting job things done, not getting business things done, not getting enough sleep so that we can have emotionally challenging conversations. And that's a huge part of flexibility, is we're always coming back to being on the same page emotionally. All right. I really gotta go to sleep before I get yawn number 7. I I hope for the people that are considering how they can be better stepping up, and the guys that, you've been taking on more of the mental load and you're seeing where you can be getting better, hoping that a couple of these stories, a couple of these examples helped you think about where you are on this journey and what could be next in terms of improving the fairness within your home. To the moms, to women, and to men, to dads, like, I just I'm sending you love right now. I don't know what you need to hear in this moment, but I'm proud of you for where you've come. I want you to have the courage to keep doing the hard work with the people in your life, to talk about invisible labor, to talk about your emotions and build emotional safe space with the people, with your people. Everyone wants and loves an emotional safe space. Not everyone knows how to build it or why to build it or if to build it. And I want you to know that you have the light in you, you have the courage in you, you have the stamina in you to build those things. And if you're worried you're burning out, if you're feeling like you're tired and you don't want that because it feels like you're not there yet, but you've been working on it, I believe in you to build what it is that you want. Sending your love your way. I hope this makes a difference.